don't you buy no ugly truck. I'm so glad that you're here this morning. May you be blessed by this service, even as we are blessed to have you here with us. And this morning I'm going to talk about, yes, trucks and troubles and other things, okay? Here's my definition of a truck. A truck is a vehicle which has the ability to move us from where we are to someplace else. It will be helpful to kind of keep this definition in your mind as we move through the service. Now, maybe some of you are too young to remember this commercial. It played in the 80s, and I don't know, it just kind of took over the airwaves on television and that kind of thing, and everybody started using it. And it featured this granny-type woman, okay, and she was dressed in farm kind of clothes and this farm hat kind of thing. And she was on camera. She looked straight at us. And she gave a warning, I guess, to her husband, her son, and to us, the consumer, that said, don't you buy no, and her hand was up, don't you buy no ugly truck, okay? And this became a slogan that people used in many ways, okay? Now, the car companies, there was one major car company, I think it was Nissan, that kind of came up with this kind of thing, but other car agencies began using this same kind of idea. And because of this, this is one of those commercials that was actually more popular than the item that the commercial was trying to sell. And so comedians started using it, political figures started using it wherever they could. Don't you buy no ugly truck, okay? And so it began to mean many things, a lot more than just not buying a certain automobile or truck. And this, and I wanted to talk about that this morning. I love things like this, okay? This was a drawback to the past. But after this commercial, all of a sudden, ugly trucks became very popular. I didn't know really what an ugly truck was, so I went online and I watched several videos of these creatures, these things. They were kind of like Frankenstein vehicles, okay? They were made up of parts of all different kind of trucks and things, and they had peeling paint, half-done paint jobs. The belly of these vehicles was rusted out. There was parts missing, bumpers that were torn off or half on, and strange things sticking out of them, okay? And I thought, okay, this gives me a sense of ugly truck. But songs began to be written about ugly trucks, okay? As I was online, this beautiful young woman was singing a song called Pretty Girls Don't Ride in No Ugly Truck. And she was marvelous. It was fun. She was talking about meeting, you know, these young men, these fine young men, and they'd come to call, and she'd open up the front door, and she'd look to see what they were riding in. If it was an ugly truck, she would say, "No way, Jose." And she said, "You know, you're trying to be cool, but that truck is not," okay? And she would sing, and the song went on, "Pretty girls don't ride in no ugly truck," okay? Real catchy kind of tune, okay? I'm not a country western type person here, but I found myself patting my foot and singing along, okay? It was pretty good. But the ugly truck, kind of like the ugly duckling, okay? It caught on, it was like wildfire. And so just this slogan made ugly trucks popular. And I was watching this site. It had monster ugly trucks, okay? And they had these derbies, the demolition derby, okay? Now this is the wildest thing, okay, that I recall seeing. These guys would drive their ugly truck and crash into these ugly trucks to try to make their trucks even uglier than they were. And I thought to myself, must be a guy thing, okay? Because I realized on the videos, not one woman was driving her ugly truck in a way to make it uglier. So I think it must have been a guy's thing, you guys. What do you agree with me, ladies? Probably a guy's thing. I just didn't see the magic in it, okay? But, you know, to each his own. One person's ugly truck is someone's huge fantasy, okay? But what I noticed is that each of these vehicles was unique. There was never another one ever like it. They were all unique stages and experiences of ugly. and I became aware of there being so many ways to express ugly. And that kind of led me to think of this talk and to use this statement here. And there are so many different kinds of trucks. Now, when I was growing up, we only knew two basic trucks, my sisters and I. The Mr. Softy ice cream truck that used to play that music as it would come in your neighborhood. And then there was also the library's bookmobile truck, which every 2 weeks it strolled through our neighborhood, and you could borrow up to 5 books at a time. So my sisters and I always got 5 books, and we swap out whatever. And then you got a chance to get 5 new ones in 2 weeks when the mobile came through. So we didn't play with trucks growing up, but those two were our favorite trucks, Mr. Softy ice cream truck and the library's bookmobile truck. But there are so many kinds of trucks. What they call a hand dolly or hand truck is a truck. When I looked this word up, okay, a truck, it said that a set of bookshelves mounted on 4 wheels or casters used in libraries is called a truck. And even a skateboard can be considered as a kind of truck because the framework has 2 wheels that help to transport the skateboard rider from here to someplace else. And so there are a lot of ways that we can think of a truck, some kind of conveyor or carrier. And let's go back to my definition of a truck. A vehicle, and now I'm going to add, or something which can carry or transport something or someone somewhere else. And then I realized that the idea of a truck and what a truck does can be a metaphor for a state of mind, an attitude that we have. A state of mind, an attitude that we have can be a transport system for us, moving us from elation and joy to perhaps tears based on how we are reacting or responding to a situation in our lives. And I would like to expand this to submit to you that a state of consciousness or an attitude of mind is like a truck, because it is something which can transport us not only physically, but also in a deeper level spiritually to one state of mind to another. Our consciousness, that is what we hold in our mind, our thoughts, feelings, our attitudes, and our beliefs, is a carrier or transport system for us. The word ugly. Now, I've already mentioned ugly, but not only are we talking about a physical unpleasantness, but when we think of the word ugly, we use it in a lot of ways. For example, the word ugly can be used to refer to things which are difficult for us to accept, things which we don't understand, things which can be painful, offensive, troubling, or disagreeable to us, or things that are mean-spirited or discouraging, disheartening, disappointing. Acts of nature and hurricanes and earthquakes and things like this can be considered, in a sense, ugly weather patterns. When the sky is cloudy and gray and overcast, and we've been looking forward to a bright day of sunshine with activities outdoors, we can think of that day as ugly. It's disagreeable, it's difficult to accept, it's unexpected. We'd rather have something else, some other kind of experience. An experience, an idea, a concept, or someone's action can even be thought of as ugly. Oh, good golly, they must have got up on the wrong side of the bed. They were just absolutely ugly at the office today. So we use this word ugly in a lot of different ways. And usually it connotes something that's negative or lacking. Our truck can be ugly. That is, our state of mind, our attitude, our consciousness can be disagreeable to us and to others. Catch my drift here? His attitude was poison affecting all of his relationships. That's a metaphor. And now let's reflect on the idea of buying something. besides making a physical or material purchase, we use buy in other ways. For example, like if I'm a business person, okay, and I have a proposal that I want to get across to the other members of my company, I want to get buy-in to this idea. That means finding a way to get others to accept or be open to the idea, the concept, or understanding that you are hoping to get across. We want to experience buy-in or get others to buy in, to flow in harmony with us, with the thing that we are proposing. Now, a buy-in can be positive or negative. For example, a negative buy-in might be that we buy in, we agree, we accept hysteria, mass hysteria. When other people are going through challenges, we jump right in there and we make it worse. We add our fear to their fear, our worry to their worry, and we can make a situation much worse than it is by buying into the negative appearances or the negative reactions that others have when we buy into that. So we have a buy-in, we have ugly, and we have trucks. Now let's combine this. Now, a state of mind or an attitude which has the power to move us or transport us from one spiritual level or state of mind to another is a truck. And the word ugly refers to something, some experience, which is distasteful, disagreeable, difficult to accept or to deal with. And now, to buy something is basically to purchase it, to take it and accept it as our own. Whether this is an actual thing or an idea, a concept, or an understanding that we accept. And sometimes, again, we buy in from the world instead of from that Christ presence within us. To buy in means that we own it in such a way that we actually respond to life from that point of view or concept or understanding. We adopt it. We make it part of our consciousness family. We bring it in. And so altogether, what we have from the old lady in those 1980s commercials when she said, "Don't you buy no ugly truck," we actually have a tremendous word of wisdom here. Because taken this way, it means do not buy into, that is, don't accept or be in agreement with or make it home with you the ugly or distasteful, disagreeable ideas, concepts, and understandings that the world may be putting out to you. Don't you buy that ugly truck. Do not truck that stuff home to your heart and to your consciousness. Do not truck that stuff in. And the Apostle Paul said this very same thing. Well, not exactly this very same thing, but this is what he meant in Romans 12:2, when the Apostle Paul said, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Meaning, do not be conformed. Don't take the shape that you create for yourself, the image that you create for yourself. Don't take your cue from what's going on out there, okay? Don't judge by these appearances. Get past that, okay? There is a presence within you, which here in Unity we call it the Christ, okay? Which is our overcomer. Remember, Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And the Christ was speaking through him. It is that Christ in us that allows us to overcome the world, gives us the power not to buy in. Okay, now those ads can be pretty powerful, can be pretty convincing, okay? We're going to experience joy and happiness if we buy this car, or if we go here for vacation, we'll have joy and we'll have happiness. The world is always putting out these lures for us, okay? And at some point we get to realize that I know where my happiness is. And yes, I can take delight in the things of the material world that are part of my experience. But I also need to know that beyond these things, there is a substance, there is a quality, there is spirit, there is a God presence, okay? And that is the source of my joy. So, Paul was in essence saying, don't you buy that ugly truck. Be not conformed. Do not shape and form yourself into that limited negative image that the world might be trying to cast on you. Or perhaps that you are casting on yourself, because oftentimes we are our own worst enemy, taking cues from what others say about us, disparaging words. And we take that and we accept that. We buy into that truck. And sometimes we don't even know that we've bought into that truck until there is pain. And we don't know what's happened. And we seek light and love and healing in this. And if you realize that you bought that ugly truck, you don't have to keep it. Nothing in this world requires that you keep that ugly truck. If you realize this is what you've got, okay? You can release it and let it go. And when the Apostle Paul said that we could be renewed, what was he saying? How do we renew our mind? And how do we stop buying the ugly trucks? Well, we've got to remember who is driving here, okay? And I saw this little comment thing here where a husband and wife, and they had some other friends in the car, and they were driving someplace, and she kept telling him where to turn. She kept telling him the light is changing, she better slow down and whatever. And he looked back and said, well, who's driving this thing? Who's driving this truck? And that kind of shut her right up, okay? And then he was able to drive in peace, okay? Now, men do that too, okay? They perhaps don't have as much security in women's driving, okay? And that commercial on television where that woman is sitting at dinner, okay, with her friend or spouse, okay, and she is saying, now, who did you say was the better driver? And she shows her, is it Allstate bonus or something for good driving, okay? And so she kind of hushes them up. But we can remember who's driving. Some words by William Ernst Henley from his beloved poem Invictus help to remind us who's in charge, who's driving. Some of the words from this poem read, "It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my life. I am the captain of my soul." Renewing our mind requires faith on our faith and acting on the Word of God. That is the guidance that we receive in our prayer and meditation times. What is God saying to me about this situation that I'm facing or this challenge? Okay. What words of wisdom can I receive and then act on in my life instead of taking my cue from out there? Because again, taking your cue from out there is buying that ugly truck. Okay. In unity, we call this presence in us the Christ, the pattern of perfection that we have begotten, that is only begotten in us from God. It is that pattern of perfection that we are all growing into as spiritual beings, learning through our human experiences. Yes, spiritually we are whole, we are perfect, but humanly we're working this out, okay? We're learning not to buy into the trucks that are not beneficial to us. Getting in touch with this inner guidance through prayer, through meditation on a regular basis, we enter into a relationship, a connection, a conscious connection that we have with God. It's one thing to realize, yes, I know there's only one presence, one power, that's God in me and in the world. But there's another to know this presence and power in you and in the world. As we apply the wisdom that we receive, it changes everything. It changes how we connect with another aspect of God. It changes how we think about the boss, okay? It changes how we feel about ourselves. The renewing of our mind brings our will into conformity, into harmony with the will of God. And what is the will of God? We know what the will of God is. We may think it's if I do this or if I become that, but essentially the will of God is that we experience good. Now, God is not telling us what that good is because that is up to us. And so we try certain things and we realize we need to let go of other things because that is not our highest good. And eventually, I think, we all reach a place where we're pretty happy with things, okay? But there's always more to learn, always more growing to be done. And that's what makes it exciting to me. Some people think, I don't want to go through all these challenges all the time. But, depending on what truck we are buying into, those challenges can be opportunities. And we can see them and experience them as opportunities, not as another problem I've got to get through, but an opportunity to grow into our Christ self, an opportunity to express more of the light and the love that's in us. And I wanted to share with you the story, and I'll make this kind of quick, of a woman who for 3 years bought that ugly truck in her relationship. And one day, she realized she didn't have to keep that. She didn't have to keep that ugly truck in her life, and she found freedom. There was a man who was taking a plane from an airline in San Francisco, and he found this note. I don't know where he found it, but on the outside it said, "Open me, read me," and he could not resist opening that up. So he looked in, and he found something amazing, something that inspired him. And this is what he found, a letter. And she wrote, "I recently left an emotionally abusive relationship after months of insults." And I won't repeat those right here. False accusations, delusions, broken mirrors, and nightly arguments and battles. And I know that I was being poisoned every day in that relationship, and that I stayed even with that. So with a heavy heart, she wrote, "I left my lover of 3 years, knowing that I had already put it off way too long. And at first he begged, then he cursed, but eventually he packed his bags and he faded out of my life like a bad dream. For the first few weeks, my body seemed to reject this. I was always in tears and upset. For 3 years, I had seen the world through the lenses of his eyes. I had allowed him to put glasses on me that I saw my world through. I didn't know who I was without him. And despite the kindness of friends and even strangers, I couldn't help feeling utterly alone. But it was this very sense of aloneness that set me free. Somewhere along the way, I let go. I released all the painful memories, the names that he called me, the shards of him that were buried deep in my brain. I stopped believing the things that he made me think about myself. And I began to see how extraordinary, how breathtakingly beautiful life is. I meditated. I drank too much coffee. I talked to strangers. I laughed at nothing. I wrote poetry and stopped to smell and photograph all the flowers. And once I discovered that my happiness depends only on myself, nothing could hurt me anymore. I have found and continue to find peace, and each day I am closer and closer to that, whatever it is that I know I am to be and to express. I am a work in progress, but I'm so full to the brim with gratitude and joy. And so, since I have opened this new chapter in my life, I want to peacefully part with the contents of the last chapter. The end of my relationship was the catalyst for a wealth of positive changes in my life. It was a symbol. More importantly, it was an act of love for me to release this. It's a realization that I deserve to be happy, and I can choose to be. So, in an effort to leave behind the things that do not help me grow, I'm letting go of a relic from my painful past. I wore this necklace, and then he found the necklace in the envelope. I wore this necklace, a gift from him, every day for 2 years. To me, letting it go now is a joyous appreciation, a joyous celebration, and a declaration that I'm moving forward with strength and with grace and with a deep, lasting peace. Please accept this gift as a reminder that we all deserve happiness. Whoever you are, and whatever your pain, whatever the pain you have faced, I hope you find peace. Namaste, Jamie. Now, leaving a toxic relationship isn't easy, but it's certainly possible. And often we need to realize that the toxic relationship we need to leave is our relationship to ourself. That ego to Christ self relationship. Jamie's letter shows that with courage, with tapping into the love that God is within, a measure of self-love, we can change our life for the better and find happiness in a way that we might not have thought possible for us. And it's all because we stopped buying that ugly truck. God bless you. Thank you. And we're going to move now to our meditation experience.